Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, back at it again with a brand new video. Now, as you guys can see from the title, this is going to be what if Deku ate the Ope-Ope no Mi fruit, or the operator fruit. Now, for those of you who may not actually know what that power even is, or who this law guy is, I'm going to be leaving a link down in the description of a video pretty much explaining what the power is, who Law is, and just a couple of things about One Piece. And for those of you who may be wondering, no, Deku's not actually going to be having hockey, since I actually have no idea how hockey even works, or any of that stuff, since, to be honest with y'all, I don't even watch One Piece like that. I mean, currently I'm at like episode 60-something, when they got eaten by a whale, so, in terms of like One Piece knowledge, I'm a noob, so in terms of some of the things that I may say, you guys may be like, yo, what are you doing? And I'm just going to be like, sorry, man. But, yeah, I hope you guys still enjoy the what if nonetheless, since, I mean, we're not exactly going to be using Law. We're going to be using just his powers. So, I don't really think I need to know too much about him. So, with that being said, let's just go ahead and get started, since I don't want to annoy you guys with any more jibber jabber. But with that being said, let's go ahead and, get started. Okay, so this story is actually all going to kick off when Deku's actually born. See, in this version of events, Deku's actually going to be inheriting his father's hair color, which is essentially just going to be black. And in terms of how Deku grows up, it's pretty much going to go up to canon up until when he's 4. Now, this is when on the day where Bakugo pretty much ends up calling Deku, well, a Deku. Pretty much one thing will actually change. When Deku goes home, his father will actually be there to talk to Deku and, maybe cheer him up a little bit, since in this version, Deku's dad is actually going to be around because instead of his usual overseas job, he's actually going to be having a job as a doctor. And he's going to be a really great one at that. He's pretty well known and, he's not exactly like famous, like someone crazy, but he definitely, his name's out there. And if you were to ask somebody who Hisashi Midoriya is, they would be able to tell you that he's a great doctor. So, yeah, that's pretty much how that goes. So, this is when we're now going to be going over to, what Hisashi says. Now, Deku would have run into the house saying, "Dad, Bakugo was mean. He called me a Deku. He said I can't do anything." As Hisashi would tell Deku, "What? Deku, don't listen to him. You do know that that actually sounds a lot like the word you can do it, Deku." As Deku would say, "Really?" As Hisashi would look at his son and tell him, "Yeah, I mean, you don't always have to listen to what he says. Maybe you can use that name to something positive. Maybe you can use it as something to tell you that you can do it. Maybe something that makes you think that you have the power to do what you think you can. You can use it for positive. Don't let him get to you, son. Don't ever give up on your dream just because somebody else tells you you can't do something. You can do anything you can and anything that you put your mind to. Okay? Promise me that you're never going to give up on your goals just because somebody else tells you you can't. Being quirkless doesn't stop you from doing anything. It just makes people doubt you more." As Deku would look towards his father and say, "Yeah, okay, Dad. I'll do what you tell me." As, Deku would have run off, and for the rest of the couple years, Deku would not actually give up at all since his father believes in him. And in turn, his mother Inko actually has to as well, since Hisashi tells her not to give up on Deku. He can do it. No matter whether he's quirkless or he has a quirk, that's not going to do anything. That's just going to make things harder. That's it. But just because he doesn't have a quirk doesn't mean he can't do it. As Inko would have actually understood what Hisashi means and would have actually been way more supportive of Deku in this version of events. So this version of Deku is actually going to be a little bit more confident, with Hisashi there to always help his son out and always tell him that he can do whatever he puts his mind to. As this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to just be chilling, honestly. As, this is when we're now going to say that he's about 6 years old, and we're just going to say that after all these years, Deku would have pretty much lived a normal life, except he would be a lot smarter than he is in canon, and he actually wouldn't let himself get pushed around just like he does in the original, because in this version, he has his father to tell him never to back down from anything. And Bakugo would have actually gained a little bit of a respect for Deku. I mean, he's never backs down, and Deku doesn't do anything unless Bakugo does something, so Bakugo would have pretty much just decided to leave him alone. In the simplest form possible. He pretty much just decided to just leave that kid alone. I mean, he's not even worth his time. He's quirkless after all. As that's pretty much how that would be going down. As now, we're actually going to be cutting over to when Deku was about 7 years old. As at this point, Hisashi would have actually found out about an African tribe that's, where else do you guys think it's going to be at? That's right, Africa. And, this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to, be telling his dad farewell, as his dad's actually going to be going on a trip to Africa to help out an African tribe leader who had an illness that up to this point has been incurable, but Hisashi would have actually found out a good therapy as well as cure for the disease and condition that the tribe leader has. As Hisashi would go over there for the next 2 months, he would have the leader pretty much be doing some therapy and taking the medicine for his condition, as it wouldn't be that serious, but it would actually definitely be killing him slowly, as the man would pretty much be suffering a little bit too much, as Hisashi would have decided that, he's going to help him no matter what. He's not going back until he helps, as he would always send letters to his son Deku, and Deku and Hisashi would always, of course, keep in contact. And this is when Hisashi would pretty much return 2 months later, after actually successfully curing the tribal leader from his disease, which was something that was kind of hard to do, but Hisashi was able to find just the right cure for it. As, Hisashi would have returned home, and before he actually came back, the leader would have actually offered, Hisashi a little bit of a token of appreciation. A fruit that they had, a weird looking fruit at that, as a little bit of a souvenir and a thank you gift for saving his life, since, that was just a little bit of a family heirloom that they've been passing down, that they've never really done anything with it, but since he saved his life, he decided it was only right to give it to him. As Hisashi would say that he cannot take that from him. I mean, that's a treasure for them, and he doesn't want to do that. As, the leader would tell him that it's all okay and that he wants him to have it. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't be breathing right now. And he's telling him thank you so much for everything he's done. As Hisashi would smile and welcome the gift. As he would say, well, it'd be pretty rude of me not to take it. As he would grab the fruit, which is pretty much inside of a little coffin that looks kind of like a treasure chest. As, this is when Deku would pretty much see his father coming home. As he would say, hey, Izuku. As Deku would say, yes. As this is when Hisashi would, look at his son. As he would say, look at what I brought back for you. It's a little souvenir from Africa. As Deku would say, awesome. As this is when, his dad would show him the fruit. And he would say, whoa, it's such a weird looking fruit. I didn't even know that things like this even existed. It's so weird. As, Hisashi would say, yeah, it is a little weird, but you want to eat it together? As Deku would say, yes. As Hisashi would tell him that they're going to be eating it together the next time that they have some free time. Maybe the next time that they finish up a movie just to see how it tastes. Or, maybe it doesn't even taste good and they're going to have to puke up afterwards. But, it'll be something fun for them. As Deku would just chuckle, and this is when they would both agree that someday they're going to be eating that fruit together. As, after this, we're now going to be cutting up into 2 months later, when Hisashi and Deku still actually haven't ate the fruit yet. As Hisashi would pretty much tell Deku that, that, he pretty much can help him. That he feels sick. As at this point, Hisashi would have actually ended up catching the illness that the leader had actually ended up catching so long ago. The same one that he had saved. As Hisashi would fall ill, and the condition would be much, much worse than the leader had. Because, see, a couple things actually changed the circumstances. See, Hisashi was there for a long time, and being in contact with him, of course he contracted it, but he didn't feel any symptoms up until a later date, so the condition got even worse, and the cure that he had already made for it wasn't even working. It was kind of like more of a placebo type of thing instead of a real quirk, where, it makes you think that it's working, but in reality, it's not that. It's something completely different. As Hisashi would try to heal himself for his family and his son, but after a while, he'd realize that it's incurable. And this is when we're actually going to be having a little bit of a time skip, about 6 months later, as at this point, Hisashi would be on his deathbed, as Deku would be holding his father's hand, telling him to not go, telling him to not leave him here, telling him that he needs him. What is he going to do without him? As Hisashi would hold Deku's hands and tell him that everything's going to be okay. Tell him that not to worry, and tell him to do everything that Hisashi had always told him. Tell him to never give up on being a hero, as he would cough and say, Izuku, promise me that you're never going to give up on what you wanted. as Deku would have a single tear roll down his cheek as he would say, I promise, as Hisashi would just smile, as his hand would fall down to the ground, and Deku would begin to cry. And this is when Deku would go home, and for the next couple of months, Deku would proceed to be grieving over the loss of his father, as instead of grieving, he would have decided that, no, he's not going to do that. If he can't save lives with his quirk, he's at least going to save lives with his father's studies, as Deku would proceed to read all of his father's books, and just study up on what it's like to be a doctor, getting all the knowledge that his father once had, and deciding that he's going to be somebody who's even better than a hero. He's going to be the hero for heroes, as that's pretty much what Deku's goal is going to be, as he would devote a lot of his time to pretty much doing a lot of, pretty much just doing a lot of studying for being a doctor, and medicines, and, just seeing how to perform surgeries and stuff like that, as at this point, Deku would not really have too much going for him, as, things would pretty much go normal with Deku just studying, as this is when one day Deku would pretty much be flipping through his, his little scratchbook that he had made with his father so long ago, as he would see a picture that he had taken with his dad a long time ago, as Deku would proceed to look at his father's picture, as he would start crying, and thinking that, why did he have to go? He shouldn't have lost him so soon, as Deku would just pretty much just be crying, asking why his father had to leave him so soon, as this is when pretty much we would have Deku just flipping through, as the book would fall out, as he would then see a picture of the fruit that they had, and the little fruit chest with Deku and him holding the box, as Deku would then say, oh, the fruit, we were gonna watch it and eat it together, as Deku would actually ask his mom to pretty much help him find the coffin that had it, as she would take him to one of Hisashi's old little offices, as it would actually be in there, inside of a little bit of a treasure box, as Deku would pretty much ask his mom if she could take him to Hisashi's grave, as he wants to eat it with his father, as Deku would pretty much ask Inko if she can do that for him, and of course she would. She would take Deku to, his... she would take Deku pretty much to Hisashi's grave, as, Deku would pretty much just be sitting there, as he would think that they were going to do this together, but since he's not here, at least he's going to be here with his father. As he would sit down and pretty much begin to swallow the fruit and eat it, as he would begin to take the first bite, as he would say, ugh, what is this? As Deku would just be like, ugh, I think I'm going to be sick, as he would just proceed to keep eating it no matter what. Because it's what his father and him was going to do, so no matter how bad it tasted, Hisashi had warned him it might have tasted bad, but Deku would have just, done it either way. As this is when Deku would proceed to pretty much just feel normal. As this is when we're going to go ahead and have a couple of things cut over to the very next day. As Deku would wake up, and when he wakes up, he would actually feel something amiss. As, in this version, Deku would wake up and out of nowhere, he would just have a strange feeling. Something would just be feeling a little weird. It would be strange. It's as if he knows he has a power and he knows how to use it. Because if you guys don't know, which I actually didn't know either, apparently people with devil fruits are aware that they have the powers and what they have to do to train those powers. But it's just the amount of training that they put into it that pretty much decides how good they get with the fruit, how powerful they become, from what I saw from a video at least. As, this is when Deku would realize that he has a little bit of a barrier that he can pretty much turn into, a sort of area that he controls. He controls what happens in there, and he can pretty much play God whenever he's inside that operation bubble. As that's exactly what Deku's going to call it. As he would go to the quirk doctor after, saying that, and the quirk doctor would pretty much determine that the quirk is that he doesn't know if it's a quirk, but he might as well list it as one anyways. As he would have that power listed as the Ope-Ope no Mi, pretty much operator. As, the short version, since you don't want to say all that, as this is when Deku would pretty much just smile, thinking that, that's exactly what it's called. As this is when Deku would pretty much for the next couple of years just begin training and doing much more of his father's work, as well as training the power of the devil fruit. He would know what it is, that it's a devil fruit, and he would also be aware that, there's no anything else like it in the world, because he ain't the only one. Since I don't exactly like giving other people the power that Deku gets, so he's going to be the only devil fruit user in this version of events, for those of you who like that. But yeah, this is when we're now going to go cut over to when Deku's pretty much a little young, as, after this, we're not going to cut to whenever he's young. We're going to cut to the day of the Sludge Villain, but before we get there, I'm definitely going to be having to do a little bit of explanation, since after all these years, a couple things would have actually ended up happening. So, after all this time, Deku would have actually learned the name of the Devil Fruit, which is the Operator Fruit. He would have known the abilities that come with it, except I'm going to be changing something up a bit. Instead of having it to where whatever happens in the little dome stays in there, I'm going to be making Deku be able to be God in a certain little section. And he would have also ended up training with the swords, as Deku would have actually learned how to use a sword, becoming a swordsman and doing a lot more medical training to pretty much learn how to become a doctor and hero at the same time, since Deku would have actually decided that he's going to do both. He's going to go to the general course once he's old enough, and he's going to also be in the hero course. Maybe he can meet some dope friends doing that. As this is when Deku would pretty much, I'm going to tell you guys how Deku ended up getting his sword. Deku would have pretty much been online one day, and he would have actually just been looking through, browsing for some cool swords, as that's what Deku wanted to do. As this is when Deku would have seen a cool looking sword called the Nodachi, as he would have actually seen it online and asked his mom if she could get it for him. And she would tell him that it's fine, and she would buy it for him once Deku was about 12. So for the next couple of years, until Deku was 16, he would have actually ended up training with that thing. Oh wait, no, because I said when he was 10. Yeah, never mind. He'd be 14, sorry. As I done goofed. As Deku would have actually just been training in that and doing everything else, as well as caring for the Hero Society. And because he does that, he also cares about saving lives in the medical field. So Deku would have always kept up with his little studies, as he wanted to be like his dad. And in this version of events, instead of looking up to All Might in the way that he does, he would actually look up to Recovery Girl, as that's somebody that his father actually used to know, but Deku was never able to actually meet personally. So, like I said, this is when we're now actually going to be skipping over to the day of the Sludge Villain incident, as Deku would pretty much proceed to, just do what he was going to do, as the day would go by normal. And at this time, Bakugo would have pretty much known that Deku had a quirk that awakened a little later, as, Bakugo would have actually stopped bullying Deku. And after all these years of being able to use that power, or the Ope-Ope no Mi, Deku's abilities would be incredible. Deku would be at Stain's level in terms of swordsmanship, and in terms of physical speed and raw abilities without even using the power of the fruit. Deku would be at about Stain's level, pretty much. He'd be at that level in terms of swordsman skill, speed, and strength. So Deku would definitely not be no joke. At this point, Bakugo's actually tried to, do something against Deku, but since this Deku's actually not a pushover, he would have actually been able to stick up for himself and actually defend himself against Bakugo. And starting from this point, things are going to be a lot different for this man Deku, as for the next 10 months, or actually no, I completely skipped over the Sludge Villain, sorry about that guys. Anyways, this is when Deku would pretty much be walking out, as Bakugo would have actually not been bothered that Deku wanted to go UA, thinking that, that nerd's definitely going to get in as well as me. I guess we're both going to go to the same school, whatever. As he would have just, had to live with that, since Deku's beat him a couple of times. And last time he fought, he got massacred, since Deku would have actually used the power of the fruit. And doing that would have actually helped him a lot, since at this point, Deku can create a little barrier, the same, let's say the size of a house. He can create a barrier the size of a house. Up to this point, the barrier the size of a house. Not a very big, the barrier about the size of a house after all these years of training. And like I said, instead of actually having things be like they were in canon, or in the One Piece, where like the actual devil fruit, where whatever happens stays in there. No. That's changing. I'm gonna make it so that anything that happens, or basically if you step in his bubble, people will see exactly what Deku does and pretty much just think that Deku's unstoppable. as they could see what Deku does. He pretty much plays God and can do whatever he wants, whatever he pleases. As it's pretty crazy, as this is when Deku would pretty much be walking home, taking a little bit of a faster path to get home, since today they're actually going to be going to Hisashi's grave to pretty much talk to him, and Deku just wants to pretty much talk to his father, like he always does. He always visits his dad's grave and, always talks, always lets him know how he's doing and how he's been, telling him that he's always kept up with what he told him, telling him that he's made friends, that, he did exactly what he promised his father he would do. As Deku would just smile, thinking that, hopefully his dad could hear when he tells him stuff, because he really does want his father to know what's going on in his life. And to Deku, he's just happy knowing that at least he has a place where he can always talk to his father, no matter how things are. As Deku would pretty much visit him after this, after taking care of the sludge villain, of course, which what he pretty much does is as soon as a sludge villain approaches him, Deku would have actually, had the barrier on all the time, since Deku would have actually decided that instead of having it so that the barrier stays on whenever he calls upon it, instead, he's going to actually gain the ability to pretty much be able to use it at all times. Basically keeping it active always to pretty much, higher its effects. And, this is when Deku would pretty much have, pretty much just bottled up the sludge villain inside of a bottle that he got out of thin air. As this is when the sludge villain would pretty much try to get Deku to, to get his body, as Deku would have pretty much just created a bottle out of nowhere and sucked him into it, kind of like the Mafuba. If you guys know where that's from, Dragon Ball, the Goku Black arc. That's pretty much what he did, as the sludge villain would have just been sucked into it, as All Might would have came in and seen what Deku did, but just asked him what happened, and Deku would of course get his autograph, since he still likes All Might a lot. But his true hero would actually be his father, instead of looking up to All Might in the same fashion that he did. So Deku would pretty much just be chilling, honestly, to keep it a buck, as Deku would pretty much just tell All Might that he'll see him around, as All Might would tell him that he'll become a great hero someday. He'll definitely become a great hero someday, as he has such a great quirk, and he can definitely help people out in terms of capturing a lot of villains. As Deku would smile, thinking that, thanks All Might, as he has no idea how powerful Deku truly is. I mean, inside of his little domain, he can do whatever he pleases. So this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to just begin to... Sorry, something got stuck. Pause. No homo. Anyways, this is when we're now actually going to be cutting over to when Deku's, pretty much at his father's grave, talking to him, telling him what I had already said earlier. As this is when we're now going to go over and cut on over to the 10 months of training. Sorry, the 10 months of training that they have between the UA exam and, now. As for the next 10 months, Deku would proceed to train and hone his swordsman skills a lot more, as well as doing a lot more studying in terms of the doctors. Because in terms of his, his little domain, he knows he can increase it even more, but, what'd be the fun in that? There's already nobody who can beat him, so there's really no point. Let's say somebody wants to shoot him, if the bullet enters his domain, he can turn it into dust. He doesn't really need to train it, but if he wants to, he could honestly train it for the next years and probably make it so that he can wrap it around the entire earth and just play God. I'm joking. But no, in all seriousness, Deku would pretty much proceed to, just go to the entrance exams, as, there's really nothing too much to cover in terms of the 10-month training arc. As Deku would go there, and he would actually not end up bumping into Uraraka in this version of events. That would actually never end up happening, as Deku would pretty much end up just going inside of the test and pretty much having it so that he pretty much aces the test. He writes down whatever answers they are, since he's extremely smart in this version of events. Not even having to look at people's papers or even get any questions wrong. Deku would actually ace the test perfectly, getting a perfect score, which actually hasn't been done since Nezu was actually the one who created, the test and took it himself. As Nezu's the only one who he thought he could ever actually get a 100% score on the test. I mean, he made it after all, so if he didn't, it would be a little tragic. So, yeah. Hold on, guys. I'll BRB. Alrighty, I'm back. Sorry that I had to go. A little unprofessional of me. But I was really thirsty and I didn't exactly want you guys to hear me or waste your time. So anyways, this is when Deku would pretty much just meet everybody outside at the field. As, you know, nothing really interesting would happen. Deku wouldn't bother going up to Uraraka since he doesn't know her, meaning Ida would have never actually had the reason to pretty much approach Deku. And Bakugo, I'm going to say that Bakugo's at the same exam that he is. Bakugo would have pretty much gone up to Deku and told him, hey, you better stay out of my way, you quirkless Deku. Or you worthless Deku instead of quirkless, since he actually does have a quirk. As Bakugo would just, scoff at him and walk off to the front. As he would tell him that he's going to crush him at this exam. As he would say this is made for him practically. Battle is his thing. As Deku would say, whatever, Bakugo. As this is when Deku would pretty much hear President Mike saying, there's no countdown in a as Deku would pretty much proceed to run off. As, there's actually no weapons allowed, so Deku wouldn't actually even be able to grab his sword. So, this is when Deku would pretty much just run in there and pretty much rush at one of the robots as he would enter its domain. And this is when Deku would pretty much just go up to it and punch its head clean off. As whatever Deku does inside of this bubble is completely up to him. And I'm going to be using this power in a completely different way that Law would. I'm honestly just taking the power and what he looks like into account pretty much. So, yeah, just what if Deku had the Ope-Ope no Mi's powers times infinity? So, yeah, this is when Deku would pretty much just run around blitzing robots and, just making it look as if it's as easy as breathing for him. Deku would go around and take them all out very swiftly and very proficiently. As, Deku wouldn't actually not be struggling at all. As this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to, go through the test, obliterating robot after robot. And since his father always told him to try his best, Deku would have done exactly that, getting way too many robots than he should have actually needed. As Deku would have actually ended up getting about 290 something points. As he wouldn't stop there, he would keep going through more and more robots, getting about 476 points. Up until this is when Deku would actually hear the scream of a girl. As Deku would look over, as he would see Uraraka there on the ground, as he would say, huh? As he would look towards her and see that she's in pain, that her ankle is stuck under some things. As Deku would decide that he got to go help this girl. As Deku would drop everything else that he was doing. As he would begin to rush towards the girl, as Ida would see Deku just running by him. As he would say, hey, don't! As Deku would just be gone. Deku would have gone over to Uraraka as he picks the rubble off of her. And this is when Deku would begin to ask her if she's okay. Asking her if she can move her foot and, asking Uraraka how she's feeling. As Deku would remove the rubble off of her, she would say, I think it's a little sprained. As Deku would say that it's no problem, he'll treat it right away. As he would rip off a piece of his shirt and pretty much tie it around Uraraka. As he would begin to treat her, and this one Uraraka would say that the robot's right there. She would begin to scream, as Deku would just not even become worried about the robot. As this is when Deku would pretty much just be like, yeah, I know. As Deku would look towards the robot and just blow at it, as it's in his domain, and Deku would send that thing hurling through 4 buildings, as that thing would just destroy anything and everything in its path, as it would have just gone flying and have been straight destroyed, massacre. As Nezu would have been staring at that, as he would just be thinking that kid's in UA. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. As Nezu personally would actually walk out there, as he would ask Alma to take him, as he would welcome Deku into his Hero Academia, before telling anybody else whether they got into it. As everybody would see, as Nezu just walked up to Deku and accepted him on the spot. I mean, who wouldn't? They just saw what he just did with their own eyes. As they'd be a little jealous, but they'd just be like, if this is what UA students are like, we have no shot. As this is when Deku would pretty much finish treating Uraraka. As she would say that she actually feels fine. As Deku would say that's great. As this is when Deku would have ended up just saying, alright, well, that's enough practice in terms of the medical stuff. Let me just use this instead. And she would say, what? As Deku would just say, here. As he would hold his hand on her leg, as he would heal it immediately. nothing, no drawbacks to it, no stamina loss. It'd get healed. Deku would heal her leg. As she would just be like, it's in perfect condition. How'd you do that? As Deku would just say, nothing too crazy. It was pretty simple. As, Uraraka would just be like, I'd say. And she would say, thank you so much. As Deku would just say, don't mention it. As he would walk off, and this is when Uraraka would say, thank you. As Deku would pretty much just say, like I said, don't mention it. As Uraraka would just thank Deku, and this is when Deku would pretty much walk off. As we're just going to go ahead and skip on over to the day when Deku arrives to class, as he would see the giant door and be getting there with his UA uniform. As Deku, at this point, pretty much looks like Law. That's essentially what Deku would have actually ended up looking like. And just pretty much wearing a UA uniform. So just imagine like a younger version of Law wearing the UA uniform, like a 16-year-old version of him. As this is when Deku would pretty much walk inside, as everybody stares at him, and they all just begin to whisper, muttering about what he did in the entrance exam, and talking about how he got accepted by Nezu personally in the exam. As everybody would huddle over Deku, asking what his quirk is, how he's so strong, how did he do that? He took out a robot that big with like no trouble at all. As Deku would just sit down and begin to talk to them all, telling them that it was pretty easy, as he's just being nonchalant about it. As Bakugo just kind of angry, asking Deku to be like, stop interrupting me. As he would say, be quiet over there. As all the kids would just kind of be like, sheesh, what's his problem? As Deku would just say, oh, that's Bakugo. He has a little bit of a temper, but if you guys just leave him alone, he'll leave you alone. Pretty much is how he is. As they'd say, oh yeah. As this is when Aizawa would pretty much wake up, as he would begin to tell them all to go outside, as Deku and the rest of the students would pretty much just meet outside with Aizawa outside. As this is when Deku would begin to change, as the class would actually see that Deku's extremely lean and ripped, and that he has a just kidding. As Deku pretty much has a tattoo. He has a tattoo, the same one that Law has on his chest. As he's pretty much built like Law and pretty much just looks like a 16-year-old version of what Law would. As every Kirishima would walk up to Deku and tell him that that's manly. As he would say why he got that, that thing, as Deku would just explain to him the story, and I couldn't bother to make it up, so just he has it because of a cool story anyways. So yeah, they'd proceed to go outside, and in terms of the quirk assessment, I'm not even gonna bother with this, honestly, guys. I mean, Deku would send that ball flying into outer space, getting infinity. He would destroy the grip strength. He would blitz the race. He would destroy the physical assessment like push-ups and sit-ups. And everybody would just be watching in awe as Deku's just pretty much playing God. He might as well be a god. Sheesh, look at what he's doing. As Deku would pretty much just be like, just be nonchalant about the entire thing. As Aizawa would just be like, this kid he's incredible. As he would say, I could see why Nezu let him in so quickly. As this is when the time would end, and this is when all the students in 1A would pretty much ask Deku if he could hang out, or maybe just train with them, maybe do anything at all. As Deku would just tell them that he has to actually get home and go study. As this is when Deku would pretty much just go home and begin a little bit of studying. As the very next day, Deku would actually have general studies. As this is when Deku would actually end up meeting Shinso. And Deku and Shinso, as soon as they meet each other, honestly, they would instantly hit it off. Deku would ask Shinso why he's not in the hero course with a quirk like that. It's extremely powerful. As Shinso would tell him that he doesn't have a fighting quirk. As Deku would say, so? You could learn how to fight on your own. You don't have to rely on a quirk at all times. As Shinso would say, it must be easy for you to say, you have an amazing quirk. You can play God. As Deku would say that it's not even like that. He could go by without even using his quirk by the amount of training he's done with his swordsmanship skills. As Shinso would look at Deku and ask, why he even wanted to train anything besides his quirk. As Deku would explain to Shinso that in this world, you can't always rely on power. Sometimes you gotta do it on your own. As Shinso would actually take that to heart, and Deku would actually tell him that maybe he could train him in terms of swords. As for the next week, Deku would actually be hanging out with Shinso every other day, as he would train Shinso in, how to wield a sword and how to train his body physically, giving him the best workouts for the quickest results. As Shinso and Deku would actually hit it off and be some pretty dang good friends, as, this is when we're now actually going to be cutting over to the hero versus villains arc, as this is actually going to be having the teams having a little bit different. See, we're actually going to be having Bakugo and Todoroki against Deku and Momo. See, as soon as, the day ended and All Might burst in through the door saying that he is here, Deku would have actually looked towards All Might, as he would then say, "Oh, All Might, it's you. I didn't think you'd be here." As All Might would say, "Ha, young man, I knew you would make it." As he would say, I did say All Might was there. And Scratch when I said that All Might was there, and he knew that he was there. As, All Might would pretty much just, look at Izuku, as he would then open the thing for their hero suits. And in terms of what Deku's hero suit is actually going to be, he would pretty much have exactly what Law is wearing in the thumbnail. He would have a zip-up jacket that he pretty much wears open. He would have his katana. He would have the same hat, the jeans, and he would have that same Law drip, except My Hero Academia style. So, yeah, it's pretty much what Deku would look like. Exactly what he does in the thumbnail, actually. Just younger, without the beard. So, yeah. And this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to just walk inside, as, he and Momo would pretty much start devising a plan, and she would just be looking towards Deku, just like, dang, this kid is, he fine as hell. As Deku would just look at her and say, yeah. As this is when Deku would pretty much look towards Momo, as he would tell her what's the plan, as she would begin to devise a plan to pretty much look towards the building, as this is when Deku would say, "Okay, you're going to do that, but first we need to take care of Bakugo, since I'm pretty sure that he's going to be coming towards us first." And she would say, "What are you talking?" And as she's saying that, you could just hear Bakugo going, "Deku!" exploding straight through the building, as he would lunge right at Deku, saying, "Die!" as he would shoot a full power explosion right at Deku's face, as Deku would have a barrier between him and Bakugo set up, as Bakugo would shoot the explosion at nothing, as Deku would appear behind Bakugo with his katana, as he didn't even unsheath it. He would then slash towards Bakugo without even taking it out of its holder, as Bakugo would be cut on his back with an X, as Bakugo would fall to his knees and then to the ground, as Momo would just stare at what Deku had just done, as she would just be amazed at what Deku was able to accomplish all by himself. I mean, he did that all on his own. There's nothing that Bakugo could have done. And this is when Deku would pretty much look towards Momo, as he would say, "All right, let's go." As he would pretty much ask Momo to create herself her own sword, as Momo would do it herself. And this is when he would tell her that she actually looks great with that thing by her side. As he would say, "Do you know how to use it?" As Momo would say, she actually does. She's actually trained in some sword skills, and she's not half bad at it. As this is when Deku would pretty much look towards her and say that, she's pretty great. Maybe with a little bit of training, she could become even better. As this is when pretty much Deku would pretty much just proceed to just be chilling. As this is when they would walk upstairs, as they know, as they get right to the second floor before Todoroki's at, as it would be completely frozen. As every time that Deku walks and takes a different step, the room would just begin to melt, as Deku would have his domain pretty much and destroy all the ice that's around them. As Deku would look towards Momo and tell her that she's going to be the one who takes care of Todoroki, and she's going to restrain him for her. As she would say, "Right." As Deku would, grab the door and hold the handle, as he would take a step towards Todoroki, and Todoroki would shoot a geyser of ice straight at Deku, as it would melt inches before hitting Momo. As Momo would ask Deku if he's sure about this, as he would say, "Go for it." As she would rush towards Todoroki with her sword in hand, as she would begin to cut Todoroki, as he would fall down, and he would tell her not to hold back, since whatever happens, Deku could heal it, as that's the power of his quirk. He can play God in a certain amount of area. As he would tell her that he can heal him no matter what. As she would say, "Okay." As she would rush towards Todoroki and slice him down. As Todoroki would have no answer. He can't use his fire, his ice. It doesn't work. So he would have actually had to resort to fist hand-to-hand, but against a sword, there was nothing he could have actually done, since he doesn't actually train his hand-to-hand capabilities at all yet. as Momo would cut him down. And this is when Deku would pretty much look towards Momo, as he would actually, look towards her and chuckle, saying that she's not half bad. With a little bit of training, maybe she can actually, join Shinso, as he could train her and him as well. As she would say, really? As Deku would say, yeah, of course, I would be happy to train you guys. As she would say, yeah, what time? As he would say, it's actually today. As later that night, Deku would pretty much proceed to train, Momo and Deku. As, this is when Deku and Momo would pretty much go to Momo's house. As Deku would have actually ended up walking her there, but just before Deku was about to leave, Momo would actually ask if he's not, if it's okay with him to, maybe go home a little early. To go home a little later. As Deku would ask what she's talking about. And this is when she would pretty much grab Deku and pull him inside, as she would tell him that, she wants to study a little bit. She wants to hit the books. She wants to do a little bit of math. She wants to do a little bit of science. She wants to hit the books for real, guys. Honestly, that's honestly the best I could tell you guys. She would be gonna, teach him a little bit of math. That she would, just start teaching him that. And, she would be gonna teach him a couple of subjects. And she decided that, she's gonna repay the favor to Deku. Since, he helped her train, and she's gonna help him train something else, if you get what I mean. Anyways, this is when, Deku would pretty much go home after that. As, Deku and Momo would have pretty much established their relationship at that point. As Deku would have actually said that, she's really great. And she doesn't mind being his girlfriend. And she would say that, of course she doesn't. As Deku would just smile, saying great. As this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to, just smile and ask her what she's doing tomorrow. As they'd pretty much go on a date again. And they'd proceed to hit more books, honestly. And this is pretty much how the routine goes. Training and hitting the books, for real. Up until we now are actually going to go ahead and get on over to the USJ arc. As they would all pretty much be on the bus, and Deku and Momo would be in the back, just pretty much talking it up, just getting to know each other a little bit more, since recently they've just kind of been studying, they've been hitting the books. And, Deku wants to know her more on a personal level, since he actually didn't even get to know her that much before, they started studying, come on now. As this is when Deku would pretty much proceed to, just be talking to Momo a little bit. As, this is when they arrive. 13 would proceed to give her a lame speech. And when Kurogiri arrives trying to teleport them all away, as soon as Kurogiri tries to teleport any of the kids and the purple mist arrives, Deku realizes what's going on. As he would create a bottle out of nowhere and have Kurogiri be warped right inside of it. As their method of escape completely gone. That means that Shigaraki and the Nomu were stuck there. And there is nothing anybody or anyone could actually do about it. Nothing at all. As this is when the heroes, 13 and Aizawa, as well as the rest of the class, would pretty much actually proceed to go and just proceed to take down all of the low-level villains. As, Deku would go to the water section and just begin to take all of them down. As Aizawa would pretty much go towards Shigaraki to try to take him down. As this is when the Nomu would have came in and started bodying him. As Deku would arrive, seeing that Aizawa was getting hurt really badly. As he would pretty much tell Aizawa that he'll help him out. As he would jump over to where Aizawa was at and tell him that he has this. As he would heal Aizawa as soon as he takes a step towards his barrier. As Aizawa would feel fine. As the Nomu would literally turn into string and fall to the ground. As Deku would say, and you? As he would crack his knuckles and say, you're gonna pay for what you tried to pull today. I can tell you're the leader. As he would crack his neck and go, and, let's just see how long you can survive. As he would unsheath his katana. As he would then, not katana, but his sword. As Deku would rush towards him. As he would cut off both of his hands, with Shigaraki screaming in complete agony. As Shigaraki would fall down to the ground, and he would start bleeding out. As Shigaraki's just on the ground, fading into unconsciousness, as Deku would proceed to heal him and hit his head. As he would knock him out and Shigaraki would be taken in. But before they could actually take him in, All For One's portal, a black mist would appear. As he would go towards Deku and shoot a giant blast at him. As he would try to teleport Shigaraki out of there. But before he even could do anything, Deku would have pretty much been in front of him. as Deku would decide that this guy, he's not going to get saved. He would slash All For One's head clean off, as All Might would have seen as Deku would have rushed at him, blitzing him, slashing his head completely off, as All Might would have just been astounded. He defeated All For One with nothing but a slash. That's incredible. This kid he's beyond anything that the world's ever seen. He couldn't have done that. For anything that he knows, he probably would have lost to him. As this is when All Might would pretty much push Deku to the side after Deku had taken care of All For One, as All Might would ask Deku what his quirk is and have a little bit of talk about it with him. As Deku would actually end up healing All Might after this talk, as All Might would be extremely thankful to Deku after explaining what had happened with the injury, who All For One was, and his suspicions about what they were trying to do. As Deku would understand that they were trying to take down the symbol of peace, but Deku would say that they still need him around for another couple of years. As Deku would revert All Might's body back to before All Might had pretty much even sustained the injury, or even started falling out of his prime. Deku would revert All Might back to his youthful days, as All Might would pretty much be 20 years old at this point, being young and having all of his powers, as Deku would pretty much proceed to, just talk to All Might, and after this, they would have the 1 week break, or actually no, they actually wouldn't even have a 1 week break, considering that nobody got hurt. Aizawa's injuries were completely reversed. Every single one of the villains was captured, including Shigaraki, Kurogiri, All For One. It would have been all over the news. Some kid was able to take them all down. And after this, Deku would have actually been awarded a professional hero license. After pulling some strings, Nezu was able to graduate Deku before anything, and Deku would have actually been permitted to take his pro hero exam. As this version of Deku would have actually been allowed to take the exam, and you all know what would have happened if Deku was there, as oh my god, it was a massacre in terms of the exam, as Deku would have pretty much wiped the floor with everybody around, as it honestly wouldn't even be a problem for him, as Deku would actually be allowed to be a full-fledged hero, and Deku would actually be working with All Might as his agency, as Deku would actually work alongside All Might as his sidekick for the next couple of weeks, as, now the students would actually be having the sports festival, as that would pretty much go its normal, and Deku would actually have a couple of his students, including Shinso, and since Shinso was actually able to replace Deku in the hero studies, Shinso and Momo pretty much taking his place, and Deku was basically All Might's sidekick for the rest of the time, for the next couple of 3 years, since that's pretty much what Deku's going to be doing to learn the ropes. As, in terms of Stain, Shinso and Momo would have actually been in Hosu City, since Deku would have actually discovered what happened to Stain, and Deku would have actually told them both that they're actually going to be the ones who are actually handling him. He would have actually told them that this is what they're going to be doing, as they would have actually taken care of the hero killer Stain. And in terms of the forced training arc and the provisional license, Deku would have no part in that. The rest of the students would, however, and everybody who passed and failed would pretty much have that happen. As a forced training arc, there would be no League of Villains attack. So pretty much it would be kind of filler to pretty much even talk about the forced training arc, since pretty much all they do is just train their quirks up. And Deku would actually be present, helping anybody pretty much train up their quirks and honing their abilities. As Deku would pretty much be able to create a room in which 1 year can pass for them to train, kind of like the hyperbolic time chamber. As after all this time, Deku would have actually been able to make it so that Deku's, his orb or his domain pretty much, or his area or his sphere pretty much is as big as, let's say, 3 houses combined. Deku's domain would pretty much be as big as 3 houses combined, and all of the UA students would actually be able to train there, as Deku would be able to create food, water, and anything else that they would be needing, as well as a training ground for all of them to use, as all of the students would be extremely grateful to Deku, as all of them would actually end up getting way more powerful than the original canons. They'd be as strong as they will be in their second years of the My Hero Academia manga once we get there. As yeah, that's pretty much how that entire situation would go. And the heroes would just look at Deku as the real number one hero. I mean, sure, All Might's powerful and all, but Deku's on a whole nother level. Deku's completely insane, and he has the power to back it up. He could honestly save the world by himself. Deku would also, during this time, be going to, the general studies still, as Deku would be attending a different school, which is actually a medical school, which that's essentially what Deku would be doing to get his degree, to become a doctor, just like his father was. So long ago, as Deku would visit his father's grave one day, telling him that he made it. He did it. He told him he'd become a hero, and after all this time, he finally did it. He was able to do it as what, he always wanted to, and he was able to make his father proud. He did what he wanted. This is when we're now going to be going over to, pretty much skipping over to the overhaul arc, as things are pretty much going to go as you guys would expect them to go, with a Deku who's this OP. Now, Sir Nida would actually call upon the help of Deku and All Might, which, since that's the case, Mirio actually would never actually end up encountering Eri, and instead it would be another hero who pretty much lets them go, so Mirio wouldn't even have the problem of that, as All Might would actually still end up passing down All for One for All to Mirio, as Mirio would gladly accept a quirk from All Might, and he would thank him for all the help that he did in terms of training him with One for All and helping him develop as, quirk user. It's just helping him overall in the greatest ways possible. It's something that Mirio and Deku could have never imagined. So in terms of the overhaul arc, that is extremely easy, honestly. Deku would have just walked in there, and at this point, his orb's a little bit about the size of the entire thing. So Deku would have just teleported straight over to Overhaul, as he would take the quirk destroying bullets, and he would tell Overhaul that if he likes destroying other people's powers so much, he might as well do that to him, as he would destroy Overhaul's quirk, take Eri and save her. And since he did that, Deku would actually be Eri's hero instead of Mirio. He would have actually ended up single-handedly being able to save and go through the entire overhaul arc. And at this time, we're now actually going to go over to when Eri's pretty much telling Deku what overhaul did to her. As afterwards, Deku would just be disgusted by the things that man did to that girl. As Deku would ask Eri if she would pretty much want to be his daughter. As Eri would say, what? As Deku would ask her, well, not really my daughter, but more like my little sister. As Eri would ask, what do you mean? As Deku would say, well, I know you've had it hard and I can help things. I can help you. As Eri would pretty much just accept Deku. As, he would ask his mom, Inko, to pretty much adopt Eri, as she would do that happily. After hearing what that man had done to her, of course she would do that. And with the kind-hearted person that Inko is, she would end up actually giving Eri an amazing life. Deku would go on to become the greatest hero ever, even better than the one that he was in the original manga, and even anime. And Deku would just be great. He'd be one of the greatest heroes ever. And this is how the story of What If Deku Ate the Ope-Ope no Mi would pretty much end. I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and I know it may not have been as long as my other, full movie What Ifs, but, I mean, come on now, this Deku has literally the power to be God. I mean, who's gonna step into him? Overhaul? Prime? No. Even if I was to actually, random thing, random villain comes in, he has the powers of everything, every single quirk in My Hero Academia. But when he steps in and tries to pretty much kill Deku, let's just say Deku, he enters his domain and Deku just, that man's GG. It's GG's. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, it has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys thought, for you, you crazy One Piece fans who were probably down in the comments below being like, this is not, I'm unsubbing, I'm leaving a dislike, you got law all wrong, this is not even what the power's like. But I mean, come on now, This is just a what if. This is for fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. With nothing else to say, it has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Officially this time, alright? Sorry about that. But anyways, peace.